Hello and welcome to another Mr. Carter Science Special. This video will be looking at a range of communicable diseases caused by bacteria. By the end of the video, you'll be able to define the term pathogen and describe and explain how a number of bacterial pathogens cause and spread diseases. So what is a pathogen? Well, a pathogen is a disease-causing microorganism. Most microorganisms are harmless, but a small number of them can cause diseases in both plants and animals. For example, bacteria, fungi, protozoans and viruses are all microbes, and some of them are capable of causing diseases. So we're going to run through a number of case studies and examples of pathogenic bacterial diseases. So our first bacterial disease is the disease cholera, which affects humans, and it's caused by a bacteria called Vibrio cholerae. Now, this bacteria is normally spread by people drinking contaminated water that's been contaminated with feces. So this disease cholera is very, very common in countries which have experienced a natural disaster or a war, so that the normal functionings of society have broken down and the sanitation has been destroyed or damaged. So people are tending to drink out of rivers and streams and puddles because that's the only water available. However, if you get cholera, then one of the symptoms is diarrhea, vomiting, and dehydration. And this is because the bacteria, the pathogen Vibrio cholerae, prevents your large intestine from absorbing water into your bloodstream. Therefore, you're going to get dehydrated. It doesn't matter how much water you drink if the large intestine can't absorb it and put it into your blood. At the same time, you're probably going to have a large amount of diarrhea and vomiting, and this will happen in streams and rivers because your sanitation facilities have often been destroyed or broken down, and therefore you're going to spread the pathogenic bacteria to more people, so you often get outbreaks of this and epidemics in areas soon after natural disasters and wars have taken place. A little bit of extra information. In the mid-1800s, Filippo Paccassini discovered the bacteria in infected people, and then around 30 years later, Robert Koch proved that it was the Vibrio cholerae bacteria that actually caused the disease cholera, and he hypothesized his 4 postulates, which are still used today, to prove that a particular pathogen causes a particular disease. Our second disease is food poisoning, and this is caused by the bacterial pathogen Salmonella. You'll notice that we've just said Salmonella species because there are a range of different Salmonella bacteria species. Salmonella is just the genus. There are many different species within that genus, but most of them will cause the food poisoning that you may well have experienced yourself at some point. This pathogen is spread through raw meat, poultry, or eating undercooked food, and the symptoms occur because Salmonella disrupts the natural flora of the gut bacteria. So you get symptoms within 8 to 72 hours of ingesting and eating this particular bacteria, and the symptoms will include abdominal cramps, vomiting, diarrhea, and in the very young and the very old, dehydration can lead to death. So food poisoning is actually a very serious disease and a serious issue. Most countries will have a governmental department to oversee food preparation and food hygiene in the kitchens to try and prevent outbreaks of Salmonella and food poisoning. A little bit of extra information for you. Cooking the food to the correct temperature will kill the Salmonella bacteria, and food prepared unhygienically can be contaminated with Salmonella and cause food poisoning. According to the World Health Organization, 2.2 million people, mainly children under 5, die from sickness and diarrhea and food poisoning every year. In the UK, poultry are vaccinated against Salmonella to control the spread of this particular pathogen. Another interesting fact is you should always wash your hands after touching raw meat to remove the bacteria from your hands so that you then don't contaminate any food, for example salad items, which would be uncooked and therefore have no chance of killing the bacteria. Our next bacterial pathogen is actually a bacteria that causes an STD, or sometimes called an STI, a sexually transmitted disease or a sexually transmitted infection. And in particular, the one we're looking at today is called gonorrhea. So gonorrhea is caused by a bacteria called Neisseria gonorrhoeae, and it's spread by unprotected sexual contact. Initial symptoms will include a thick yellow or green discharge from the vagina or the penis, pain during urination for both men and women. However, the later stages are often symptomless. In fact, 10% of infected men and 50% of infected women will have absolutely no symptoms at all. So this is again more evidence why you should always be making certain that you protect yourself against sexually transmitted diseases if you are having sexual contact. Long-term effects of the gonorrhea bacteria, if left untreated, include pelvic pain, infertility, ectopic pregnancies. Babies that are born to mothers who have been infected and are currently infected may have severe eye infections and could even become blind. So again, prevention is far better than the cure. However, we can treat gonorrhea infections. Because gonorrhea is a bacterial infection, it can be treated by antibiotics. Remember, we can use antibiotics to treat any or most bacterial pathogens, because most antibiotics will work by damaging the cellular structure of the bacteria. For example, penicillin would affect the cell walls of many bacteria. Also, remember, antibiotics cannot be used against viral infections because viruses live inside the cells, so the antibiotics cannot reach them, and also viruses do not have cell walls or the particular structures that the antibiotics will be attacking. So gonorrhea can be treated with antibiotics. However, many strains of gonorrhea have evolved resistance to many antibiotics, so treating gonorrhea is becoming more and more difficult, and therefore gonorrhea infections are becoming more and more common. Using condoms and barrier methods will prevent the spread of gonorrhea from person to person, so it's very important that you practice safe sex. The next bacterial infection is called Crown Gall, and this is about an infection that actually affects plants, not animals. And Crown Gall is caused by a bacterium called Agrobacterium tumefaciens. And the bacteria is actually a very interesting bacteria because it will inject its plasmids into the plant cells. And the bacterial DNA contained within the plasmid will take over the cell and cause a mass of new undifferentiated cells to grow, that you can see here, almost like a cancer within the plant. Very few bacteria species infect plants, and those that do are usually found in tropical and subtropical regions. Agrobacterium can infect many different plant species, including fruit trees, vegetables, and garden flowering plants. And agrobacterium are key tools for scientists who wish to genetically modify plant cells. And this works by the scientists modifying the agrobacterium's plasmid, inserting new genes that the scientist is interested in, and then they can use the bacteria itself to insert the plasmid and therefore the new genes into the plant cells, and this can be used to introduce resistance or faster growth or quicker flowering into plant species. But if a plant naturally gets infected with the agrobacterium species, then this mass of unspecialized cells will form, and this is known as our crown gall, and it can remove nutrients and use up far too many nutrients, so the plant itself can begin to wither and die. Our final disease that we'll be looking at today is tuberculosis, often called TB, and this is a disease that affects humans, and it's caused by a bacterium called Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It's spread through coughing and spitting, and the bacteria will infect and damage the lungs. So if you get this infection, you're more likely to cough and more likely to spit out any mucus that you have in your mouth. In some poorer areas of the world where spitting is a common habit, this disease is endemic to many of those areas. For example, it's endemic in India and Pakistan. So you may well find that if you are infected with a tuberculosis bacterium, that you will do a lot of coughing. You might spit up or cough out blood speckled mucus. You're likely to have a high fever, a body temperature above 37 degrees, and you'll probably experience weight loss. One interesting fact about TB is that it again was Robert Koch who proved that TB was actually a different disease to cholera and caused by a different bacteria. So the diseases we've run through today are diseases that are likely to come up in your AQA examinations. You will be expected to know the symptoms and the causes, but not necessarily the name of the bacteria that actually causes them. That will often be given to you within an exam question. I hope you've enjoyed this video and I hope you found it very useful. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment below to let me know what you've learnt. Thank you for watching.